watching Spilling Ink.
Most people we get on, it's either blinding white light from the front or kind of hidden in the shadow like Jim over there.
You know, my office doesn't have any lights, Jason. Matter of fact, I'm sitting here looking at the spotlight thinking I'm under questioning. But I was going to say, I will say that if you give me a minute to go get my Crown Royal, I too could be lit.
Oh, nice.
Welcome to another episode of Spilling Ink, the talk show that takes you behind the book to meet the authors and professionals in the publishing industry. This week, we're talking to authors who also have podcasts and web shows where they interview other authors to talk about their stories and how they do what they do. So let's go ahead and we're going to throw Christie under the bus first. Tell us a little bit about you and your show.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christie Stratos, and I actually have two YouTube shows. One is my author platform where I give writing advice, and the other one is called The Writer's Edge, where I have other people on and panelists who give really great writing advice. So they're both a lot of fun, but very different formats. And me, myself, I am an author, the author of Anatomy of a Darkened Heart and Lock and Key, both in the Dark Victoriana collection. And they're both historical fiction and psychological suspense. So I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yay.
Wait, Katie disappeared. I was writing down your info, waiting for her to respond, and I was like, oh, shit, she's gone.
She ran away.
Hey, Jason, if you could swing again on her show, she has a pretty good show.
I know Katie was on the show.
I was on it with Katie, actually.
Oh, you guys were both on at the same time?
Yeah.
Nice. Nice. You know,
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You know, I'm getting this kind of crazy trippy effect now with the cool damask background that you have, where it's almost like it's got like waves and I'm like going down a tunnel in Doctor Who and getting lost. Katie, do not talk about Doctor Who tonight.
Are you sure we could spend another half an hour talking about it?
Yeah. Seriously, it was way more than that, and I had to cut out a lot.
We derailed so badly last week.
You can never have too much Doctor Who. Come on.
No, stop, guys, stop. We cannot do it again.
Okay, back on point.
All right. We also have Jim Christina again here tonight. Jim,
yes,
tell us about it yourself.
Well, I am Jim Christina. I am also a writer of Western fiction and some historical fiction. Also have a radio show called The Writer's Block on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. on LA Talk Radio. And Richard Paolinelli is my co-host along with Bobby Jean Bell. And the fourth Thursday of every month, Russ Avison. And we talk to writers and you know, it's a fun hour. It's a great fun hour. That's pretty much all I have. No, and I actually just did a book with Richard. We just finished a Western called The Last Lonely Trail. See, I remembered Richard. Actually, I'm looking at it right now.
What was it that you were having trouble remembering? The title?
The title.
I threw it on air one time to stamp it on his forehead so he would never forget it.
We just actually printed it on the book cover.
You know, one of the things that Katie and I talking about tonight was how to not suck at being an author. I feel like remembering the book title, that could go near the top.
Well, it could very well. It could very well. But, hey, you know, I remember all of my titles but when I write by myself. But
I see.
It was like writing with Richard. I mean, we're throwing this thing back and forth, and the title kind of gets lost in the writing.
I got you. I hear you. Well, Richard, tell us a little bit.
Thing I come up with.
Besides that, we're both Italians, so you know things happen.
Yeah,
that's true. And fantastically good looking. You can't deny that.
Well, that's the whole package here.
Yeah.
Yes. That's right.
Hey, Jason, you're no slug.
What's that?
I said you're no slug.
Oh, thank you.
I thought he said something else there for a second.
No, you noticed I didn't mention Richard in there, but that's okay.
Well, he has to look at me across the table once every Thursday, so I cut him some slack.
Ooh.
Richard actually is our business partner. We have a business together, which is Tuscany Bay Books and Black Dog Publishing.
He's part of Black Dog as well?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the Tuscany Bay Books part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should we let Richard talk about himself, or should we just keep talking about him like he's not here?
I'm introduced, I guess. No, my name's Richard Paolinelli. I'm an author. Been writing now fiction-wise since about 2010. I've got more books than you have time for me to talk about right now. But I'm a co-host with Jim on the Writer's Block. Most of my work is science fiction, but he and I got together, did that Western, and we had a blast writing it. I mean, there's some creative ways to kill off the bad guys in that book. And
It really, truly is.
yeah, and this is for Jason, because I am such a sci-fi guy. Yes, I'm also a Whovian. So there you go.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And that's about it. You know, that's what I am trying to set up a science fiction show on LA Talk Radio, but that's probably a little bit down the road.
Okay. All right. So you've been writing a long time. You've got a lot of books. You say there's too many books to mention. Do you have a wall of fame somewhere near you? You could pan over.
If you look over my shoulder here, those books that are piled up about right in there, those are all mine. There's 6 novels now with Jim and I's book, which he is showing. There is 3 Sherlock Holmes anthologies I've been a part of, and this year there's probably going to be another 5 or 6 anthologies that I've done, and I've got 2 books that are coming out later in the year. So yeah, that shelf is going to grow, and I'm probably going to have to add another shelf.
That's fantastic. That's a good problem to have. I think
It is.
Katie has a shelf. Katie has a shelf very similar to that. That's a hard word to say. Shelf. I don't like that word. Katie has a wooden plank that's also very full.
There you go.
Yes.
He has a very nice library. There you go.
There we go.
That should go into your How to Write Good and Stuff book, Jason.
Yes, yes. Good and stuff. And we spell it G-U-D, right? Good and stuff. Good and stuff. I like
No, that would be good.
Oh, good. Good and stuff.
Yeah. No, that's Scad the Whovian. How to write good.
Oh, here comes Oli. Look out.
All right. Well, speaking of writing good and stuff, let's talk about how you transition from writing books into talking about books and talking to others about books.
Boring.
Okay.
Who wants to go first? Should I do the eeny, meeny, miny, mo method, or does somebody want to just jump in?
Christie.
I'll go first. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I have 2 YouTube channels. So what happened with me was I really enjoyed writing, of course. It's something I've always done. And so once I put out my first book, and actually it might have even been before I put out my first book, I thought I really want to share my experience, but not just my experience, advice that I have from all the years that I've been writing for other people. Because what would happen is I would look something up. I would say, does anyone else struggle with this? And I would look it up and sort of sometimes not find it, or sometimes find it, but the advice just wouldn't apply to me. And I had like totally different experiences. So I was like, maybe I could talk about these experiences on my own YouTube channel, and then other people won't feel so alone either when they have like totally different, situations or difficulties or something. And, one example of that is that I have a video all about writer's block, which I'm sure most of us have something on that. And I talk about like unusual ways that I break it. And I've had people say like, okay, I've never heard of this, but I think it's actually going to work for me, So it was just kind of that trying to put out something that was a little bit different that other people could also relate to, that I couldn't find anywhere. And then for the Writer's Edge, my whole thing was really, that was actually a show that I adopted from fantasy author Joshua Robertson. He's awesome. You should go check him out. So he started that one, and then he handed it off to me. And that was where I was saying a lot of people would like advice and stuff from a lot of authors. So I was trying to look for experts, people who have written tons of books, like romance books, and then have a romance panel and ask some lighter questions, but a lot more in-depth questions too, that again is kind of tough to find elsewhere, and opinions from people who really know what they're talking about. So those were kind of how my writing and just how the whole thing came together on both channels.
That's awesome. I like how you wanted to share your experiences and help other people through those experiences. And it kind of just fell into, doing another show where you're talking to not just the audience, but you're talking with other people who have either had those experiences or who know more about them. So you can kind of gain that knowledge as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I have to say, every time I do a Writer's Ed show, I learn so much. And even when I think I've got the topic down, I learn so much. It's amazing.
Yep. I think we get the same thing here at Spilling Ink. We learn so much from everybody who comes on. Even new authors can bring something to the table that you might not have known.
Oh, absolutely.
I really like talking to Ronnie Verdi, and I think that at the time that we talked to him, he had published his first book and was working on a second. And I really liked talking to him because he was really young and he was really on top of kind of new trends that were happening, and he just had tons of different ideas. And I actually have taken some of those and started using them myself, and it's fun because we meet so many different people, from people who do shows to people who just write to people who edit to people who do cover art. So I don't know, it's a cool thing to kind of check it out from all different angles. Now, Christie, how long have you been writing?
My whole life. I actually started with poetry when I could first write. And then I said, oh, I really hate short stories. So naturally, that was the next thing I wrote. And then went into novels. I was writing novels in middle school, I think. My first one was in middle school, and then my second one was in high school. So, but it was funny because I thought, oh, if I don't publish a novel before I go on to college, that's going to be it for me. I'm not going to have another chance. Like, I don't know where I got that idea, but that was it for me. I thought that was the end. And of course, I realized that was not the truth at all. And I had totally given up in college, just thinking, I don't know where I'm going to put this writing. Who am I going to submit to? Nobody cares. And then I just happened to submit to a particular contest, just throwing something out there. And I actually won it and was like, okay, so this writing thing might be a good idea after all. And that's kind of like where my journey, I guess, where my confidence started, so that helped a lot, I have to say, for someone who was sort of struggling with whether I should or should not move forward with it from there. So, and ever since then, after I graduated, it really gave me a lot of meaning, like, to life. It just made me feel like I was fulfilling something that had to be fulfilled within myself. So I've been writing ever since.
That's awesome, man. What a freaking way to boost your confidence too, winning a contest like that. That's awesome. Like, I'm charged up just hearing that. I'm like, man, I need to win something. I need that affirmation.
It was incredible.
I entered a contest for I don't know, whatever it was. But anyway, I sent the book off, and it's supposed to be like get results back in 3 or 4 months. And I got results back, and out of 5 points possible, I got a 4.2. And Jason, this is no shit. You know what they ding me on? You're not supposed to write dialogue like people talk. You're supposed to write it like the English that you learn in books, because everybody picks up on the fact that if you got a bad guy, he can't talk very well. That's what the guy told me. And wow. And fiction stories don't have forwards.
Oh.
I was telling Richard this the other night on the way down to the studio, and he's cracking up.
Yeah, I wrote the forward for that book, so I'm like,
it's Richard's fault.
Yeah, it's my forward, and you're slamming it. All right. Jim, tell me who spent that.
Yeah,
so I can't go look the guy up either.
They ding me on dialogue, and I think I write really good dialogue. So
apparently, too good.
Well, apparently, I mean, you can read it and just tell the guy's Irish, or from some podunk town in Arkansas.
Oh no!
But that's one thing, like, I hate to hear, and maybe you guys agree. Supposed to. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to do that.
Oh, I know. Well, when you get a bunch of judges that are sitting around, that's all they do all day is, scratch their eyes, pick their nose, and read books. And a lot of them, I don't think, are really that versed on writing now as compared to maybe 15 or 20 years ago, because the whole genre has changed. The whole thing has changed. I can remember reading books, when I was a kid, and they were right. The dialogue was like English perfect. Not anymore, but hey, I guess when you get judges that are 163 years old, you got to expect that.
Maybe they're trying to judge literary works instead of genre works.
Maybe
they're confused.
Well, I don't know if confusion is it. I just don't think that I think they're passing on what they think is correct, and that's not really fair in a contest. So, that's my opinion, not necessarily that of the management, which, of course, Christie is part of the management.
So, all right. So you read a lot of books.
Oh, I do.
You read a lot of books, and before we were really live here, you guys were talking about how you've been reading a lot of depressing books lately.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So
Very
do you
dark. This last one was very dark.
now before each show you'll have an author schedule, like Katie came on your show,
Right.
and you guys actually as a team actually sit down and read that book, that way you can talk about it during the show?
Every single host on that show reads that book.
And how often do you have authors on? Is it once a week or
Every week.
Every week.
wow? Now, Christie, do you do something similar or no?
Mine is once a month. The Writer's Edge is once a month. Actually, coincidentally, I was kind of cracking up, Jim, when you said for Thursday, because that's when we do ours too. So, but you know, it's flexible. Sometimes it's a different day, but yeah, it's more live panels. I don't necessarily read the person's books. I research them to see what they've done and what they've accomplished. So I have an idea of who I'm talking to and whether it's a good idea to have them on. But I can't say I have time. I don't know how you guys do it, reading a book. What is it, a book a week then, huh?
A book a
At
week,
least.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it. That's amazing.
I don't know how you do it either. I mean, I love the idea. In fact, Katie and David and I have chatted about this before, and we were like, I don't know when the hell we would have time to do that. I mean,
Yeah. Well, that was part of the commitment of doing the show, is that we would always give the author our full attention and read his book. I mean, you can't really sit down and discuss a novel with an author unless you've read it. I mean, we don't rely on crib sheets, and we don't have producers reading books and giving us tear sheets. You know, we've got to read it. We don't always like them, do we, Richard?
No, we don't. But we, you know, the thing we try to do is we try to make the author not only feel welcome on the show, but feel like they didn't waste an hour of their life by being on the show. So we're there promoting them as much as we can, regardless of, you know, like last week's, it was like, as Jim was saying, it was dark and it was hard to get through it, but you get through it. And then when you get to the show, you can actually have an intelligent conversation with them about the content. And in my case, I always like to look for different things the author has done that maybe others don't. And one thing that came up is we've had 2 straight weeks of fiction novels with discussion questions at the end. And I've never seen that before. And so I finally asked our guest last week, and she said that's a book club thing. If you're targeting book clubs, the publisher wants questions so that they can discuss at the end of the book club for those book clubs that aren't there just to drink wine, which makes sense. But I had never thought of that before.
We can drink wine and discuss books. It's perfectly normal.
That's me.
Yeah, drink wine and talk about Doctor Who. That's what we just said, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe bring the TARDIS back down.
Yes.
And
You know,
it's
if
the
they don't
writer's
like the
writer's
book,
block
you just go
month.
back in the TARDIS and you change things.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, it's even like a book we had, about a month and a half ago, it was 832 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the one question that came out of that was, why didn't you chop this thing in half and make a series out of it? The guy said, I just want to tell the whole thing in one shot. He did, but it was a monster to get through. So we have these books, but we always find a way to talk about them in a positive light.
Right. Well, because the writer is always redeemable. Sometimes the fiction is not.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask. Is if you read something that you're just like, oh my God, this is absolute shit. What do you do at that point?
Well, you don't tell them it's absolute shit.
Well, I would think not. I mean,
what you do is you talk. Then you get him to talk about his own stuff and just let him ramble. In this particular case that Richard was referring to, that's exactly what the man did. So we really kind of got off the hook on that one.
Yeah, we did.
But I can't tell you how chagrined I am when we get a book from an author and it's like 600, 700 pages. I go, shit. There goes a week and a half.
Yeah.
now you guys clearly have a lot of time. I'm assuming that both you and Richard have been retired for many, many years now. Is that?
I've only been retired for a year.
Now that we retired, we're busier than we were before.
That's true. Busier than I ever was when I was working.
Yeah. So yeah, we tried to retire. It didn't work out.
So now, how does everybody get people for their show? Where do you get your guests from usually?
We have a booking manager and a producer for our show. and all the writers and Ricky comes through us. He goes through Jerry to get his writers on the show, and we everybody goes through Jerry. It doesn't matter who they are, what publicists they are. It doesn't matter. They go through Jerry, and she's the one that schedules everything. She gets us all the information, the book. She gets us everything we need to do the show.
Okay, and that's your wife, right?
Yeah,
the boss lady. Okay, all right.
Well, I never say that in front of her, Jason.
Yeah, that's right.
It's actually
so now, Jerry.
It's Richard's radio wife.
Yes. Yep. That's my radio wife.
But we're very fortunate in the fact that we don't have to do that. We just get the material and we talk to the authors. So
yeah, that's great. That's really nice. For me, it's different. For me, I have to, it depends. If it's a general writing conversation that anybody could talk about, then I might pull some of my friends in who I know who are really good writers, especially anybody who's more published or has been writing for a long time. But if it's about like a specific genre, I'm actually digging through Amazon looking for a good variety, people who have published a number of books, something like that, you know, and that's usually how I do it. So like for the last one that I did, which was a romance one, I was looking through all the romance subgenres because I didn't just want the typical, like what we all would assume stereotypically a romance would be. Mm-hmm. I was looking at like military romance and all kinds of different things that I didn't know much about and that I would bet a lot of viewers wouldn't know much about. So I send out, I would say, a ton of emails, and it takes a lot of time, honestly. That's probably the most time consuming part. And then, you know, I get a number of people back, and those are the people I have on the show. So I always know that they're going to be really, you know, knowledgeable. But it is a process, I will say. It
is a process. Yeah. And, you know, Jerry just panics when she can't hear back from somebody because they may be scheduled for 2 weeks down the road. And if she doesn't hear back, now she's saying, well, what do I do? And it's nothing. If they don't get back to you, we bump them from the schedule, pull someone else in. It's real simple.
Which happened with about a year and a half ago before I became a co-host on the show.
Right.
You had a guest, I think, bailed. And so Jim called and said, are you doing anything? No, tomorrow. So he called me on Wednesday. I said, no, why? And he goes, well, you're on the show. I'm like, okay, you know, I'll come up with something. And it worked out because I just had a book come out about a month earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, that's the thing. We have options, but we'd rather have the original guest scheduled.
And we have a waiting list. So we have people that are waiting to get on the show. I will not pat myself on the back for this, but we started out with like 1,500 listeners, and we're over 500,000 now.
Wow, that's awesome.
So we've got a really good base. So we're real proud of this show. And if you haven't listened, Jason, you need to.
Yeah, I do. I have not listened, and I do need to listen. I'm terrible.
That's something I want to touch on too, is getting your viewers, getting your listeners, and promoting your show. But before we get to that, let me ask Christie, because you actually reach out and book people. Do you also have a waiting list for people who may contact you and say, oh, I'd love to be on your show. When can I?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes we do have, I have a website, thewritersedgeshow.com, and people can contact me through there, and sometimes they get an email asking if they can be on the show. And so it will highly depend on their genre and when, you know, that show would be. So recently I had someone who just couldn't manage with his time because he was in Canada, and I think he worked nights, and that's when we put the show on. So instead, I just asked if he could write a blog post, and I put that on, you know, the website, and it worked out just fine. So either way, it's going to work out. But yeah, sometimes there is a waiting, and I would have to figure out when would the show be that they would fit best. And I don't want to just stick them somewhere. They have to contribute a lot to the conversation.
Now, for your shows, Christie, are your shows an hour long? Is that pretty typical for you?
Yeah, and I've been really, really trying to keep it to an hour. Sometimes I'm sure you guys all have experience when you have an awesome discussion going on and it goes on for like, you know, twice the amount of time or an hour and a half or whatever it is. But I do try to stick to the hour at least.
Now, how do you when you go into to a show, when you're structuring your show, do you already have your topics and kind of an outline laid out ahead of time?
Yeah.
How do you come up with that? What is your process normally? Is it tailored to the individual guests, or do you have an idea beforehand saying, okay, I really want to do a show and cover these topics, and then look for guests that are going to suit those?
Pretty much what I do is I pick a general topic, see who I get, and then base my questions on them. So if, I would get maybe 5 people or something like that, and I'm trying to get very diverse people, and that way I can ask a lot of diverse questions and try to answer every viewer's questions and have something for everyone. That's one of my goals. So I'll come up with the questions, send them out the week before. And those are the base questions, just the basic ones. And then we usually go off of those questions, and I'll think of more at the time, during the show, but it's a live show. So the chat will also ask questions, and those can be really interesting. And a lot of times they're very in-depth about writing. Usually it's going to be based solely on the art of writing. And so we get some amazing questions from the chat, and it's a lot of fun that way. But I do usually try to include I try to do writing process, industry, their particular genre, and then it can be anything outside of that as it comes up.
Now, you said you're broadcast live. Do you broadcast through Hangouts and then YouTube?
Yes, that's exactly how I did.
Okay. And do you go back through after the live show? Do you bring those videos down, edit them, and then re-upload them, or do you just leave them as is, as they were on the live show?
I leave them as is, 100%. I edit on my other channel, my author channel, my own author channel. Then sometimes I'll do pre-recorded and edit myself. But lately I've been doing just a lot of live streaming in general. And again, like that interaction with the chat is a lot of fun, and it brings a lot of questions I never would have thought of to the table. So I don't really edit anything out. And I can't say I've had a lot of situations where I wish I could even. So it's okay.
That's cool. We have been talking, and I have been pushing for doing more live shows simply because the editing is a very time-consuming process that no one really loves doing. And so here's the next thing we wanted to talk about. Why are you shaking your head, Katie? I'm always on.
I hate it.
I am.
No, I hate editing. That's the worst part of it. Because when you've got like the OCD personality, and you want it to be perfect when it goes up, and you're sitting there for 2 hours counting ums and cutting out, small bits and pieces of just dead airspace to fit it into that perfect hour. Yeah, I hate editing.
It really takes time, yeah.
It's always a bummer of a day when you have editing day, but okay. So this doesn't apply really as much to Jim and Richard, but I wanted to talk to you, Christie, about this tonight. Is how do you attract the viewers? Because we don't have any problem at all getting guests on the show. I mean, we could get guests usually at the drop of a hat, because a lot of people want to come on and be able to promote themselves and talk about what they do, and we love that because that's what we do as authors. But how do you get people to watch the show? How do you get them to commit to even coming on to see it when time is such a valuable commodity for people right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that's the toughest part, getting the people in. It's, people would like to be on the show, and then you have to make sure that it's worth their time by having people watch it. But, even on your own YouTube show, if you're just by yourself, you'd like people to, see your advice and give, comments and say if they agree or disagree. Either way. So of course, like I put it across my social media platforms, but I would say the sharing is really the most important. And I've been looking at my analytics and seeing like how long people generally watch for after the show has actually gone live, because we usually keep people during the show, but after it's live and sitting there on YouTube, that's when it can get a little bit trickier. And so there will be some changes to the Writer's Edge starting in June that I will announce closer to that time, maybe May or June. But
I want to know now.
No. Cliffhanger. But yeah, typically you really need to get people to share what they've, the show that they've been on. And so when you get bigger authors, once they share to their platform, it's really, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for people who are going to share that way. And the last one with, we had a couple of romance authors that have a huge audience base. And it was really funny because one of them had posted on their Facebook page ahead of time and said, I've never been on a live show. Please come support me. I'm scared, And of course, I don't blame her. Your first time live is nerve-wracking, but she had a good experience and she wants to do it again, which is great. I mean, that makes me happy. And her audience did come and they were there to support her. So the more other people are willing to share the show, I mean, that's really how it gets out there, at least for my show.
So how do you encourage people to share it? Because we have our letters that we send out to people before the show. Usually it's a couple letters that say, hey, this is what to expect, and we're hoping you send us these book covers and cover shots, which people don't like to send us their book covers and cover shots. I'm not sure why. I'm not naming any names, but you know who you are, and it's like half of you that don't send us the book covers.
Nobody reads the emails I send.
Hey, I said it. It was just late.
But
you should see the conversations that go on behind the scenes. I'm like, you know what? I sent the emails. They didn't reply. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, and I open the video up on editing day, and I'm like, okay, I'm pumped up. I've had, like 4 espressos now. I'm going to edit this shit, and I have nothing. And I'm like, God, dang it. All right, so I was going somewhere with this. What was I talking about?
We send emails out. We send requests for people to share.
Yes.
It's all a system.
Yes. We have a system, and people. I feel like people know that they should share, but then sometimes we don't get kind of that the cooperation afterwards on sharing the video. So how do you encourage people to do that? Are you doing anything in particular, sending out reminder emails or Facebook messages, or do your people just share things for you?
I can't say that I ask specifically. I don't push them or anything. Maybe I should, actually. I just haven't. But typically they share it themselves, because if they want to be seen, then there's only one way to get that to happen, and that's to share it. So, typically they share it themselves. And I have, a number of people who, fortunately, it's really amazing. They come every time to watch the show live, and they typically share it as well. So that's all super helpful. But I can't say that I do anything in particular to get them to share. And really, sometimes I could do a better job with sharing, like on Instagram, where I have a bigger base there. But I know everyone's super busy and it's tough. So, I do this a little bit and get lucky a lot.
Now, Jim, let's switch over to you. Your show has sponsorship, so you don't necessarily have to push for all the shares in order to get the viewers, right?
Yes.
Jim, could you get a little closer to the camera for us, though, Jim? Okay, that's better. All right, now continue.
I'm laughing because we have guests that will pull away from the radio mics on us. Over there.
Yes, we do have. We have sponsors, and we actually we only have like 3. Let's see, we have 2 that pay, and 2 that don't. But they're also the 2 that don't. We're also hosts of the show, so I'm not going to pay to sponsor my own show. But we do. But then we rely a lot on our authors for word of mouth, and they do. I mean, with that many listeners that we've got now, we really don't have to push our show anymore, because I say it in almost every post that I do on Facebook and with our producer, our producer, that we are the best of what we do on the radio. We have one of the best shows on the radio, I think, and we're limited to 50 minutes. So you got to get a lot of stuff in there in 50 minutes.
So what you're saying pretty much is that it could be the best 50 minutes of your week listening to the show.
Oh, you know what? It's the very best 50 minutes of my week just doing the show. So, I mean, listening to the show is a lot of fun. And if you haven't listened, you really should, because it's not all serious business. We're just like anything else on the radio. We just, we go off on tangents, and our format is we don't have a format. That would be to answer Christie's question. We don't have a format.
So how do you keep the show going? Is everybody just kind of bantering the whole time?
No. The authors pretty much, we let the author drive his interview, and we all will come up with questions before the show. And I think one time, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, I think one time all 3 of us had the same questions.
Yes, that was that one time, and
And we just let Bobby Jean ask him, and then you and I sat there and went for coffee.
Yeah, that's what we do when Bobby Jean's on a roll. We get out of her way.
Yeah, we could just, she's in Albuquerque, so we just let her be. But no, the format is loose and it's fun, and we want our authors on our show to have fun. And if they get off our show and they didn't have fun, then we did something wrong. Well, Katie, you were on the show. Did you have a good time?
I did, absolutely.
So that's the way we treat all of our authors, with respect. We let them pretty much determine how they want the interview to go, and we just kind of follow their lead. And there's always questions, Jason. You know that you can always come up with questions.
Well, Katie,
I prefer formats like that where you can just let the conversation happen and go wherever it takes you, because you can often get into some fun areas when you do that.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but we do have certain things that we do like to ask, like about writer's block. We like to ask about process if we get a chance. And sometimes the author is just talking so much, we don't get a chance to ask some questions. So we just kind of let it go. We just don't.
I have a scenario here. Okay, so you've got this young first-time author, probably from Canada. They're super nervous and they're super shy. Somehow they've gotten themselves booked on your show, either through their publicist or through inquiring on your website, and they don't really know how to do it yet. They don't have their legs under them yet. How do you get them through the show and get them to open up with you?
The guy
just have to keep talking to them.
One book that we had on a few weeks back. I can't remember.
Mark.
Yeah, he came on and Jim asked the first question, and it was a one-word answer in dead air. And I think Jim and I looked at each other and went, "Oh boy, here we go." But we kept going, and I think after a few minutes we finally drew him out, and he took off and did really well.
Yeah.
So you just kind of handle it as it happens.
I think you just have to remember that every author, a brand new one or seasoned one, they all like to talk about their work. And if you can get them talking about their work, a lot of times you can't get them to shut up, and that's seasoned authors or brand new ones. Brand new authors are easy to get to talk to most of the time because they're so proud of what they've got. And so it's not that hard to get them to talk. Sometimes it's hard to keep them going. We had one on, I like to use this as an example. We had an author on our first year, and he was he was one of your ex-agents, Richard. He was one of her clients.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And he came on and he started talking about his wife who had died in the green room. And by the time we got in the studio, got set up and to go, that's all he wanted to talk about was his dead wife. And the guy had written some really good stuff, but he didn't want to talk about that. I think he thought it was a counseling session. I don't know. That was the hardest show I think we've ever done. Was with him. His name was
Dr. Jim.
Yeah, his name was Jack Martin. I'm a nice guy, but we just couldn't get him away from his wife.
Dude, this is totally not funny, Jim.
Well, it totally is now. It wasn't then.
Oh, Katie.
How does this work? Happening? Sorry, I totally didn't hear that, Jason. What'd you say?
I said, you see what's happening, Katie, when you let the cats free?
Yep, we all just,
Oh, hey, you should have been listening when we had a gentleman on, and he gave us a brand new number, and we go to call before the show to make sure we could get him, and we get we cannot complete your call at this time.
Yeah.
That set off a reaction where everything else went wrong for the rest of the night.
God.
I'm reading my ad copy, and he calls off, and he wasn't muted like we normally do during the ads. So as I'm reading, right in the middle of it here, I'm upstairs on the phone. My cell phone died. I'm gone. I kind of choked out the last two paragraphs, threw the ad copy up in the air, and just sat back and waved my hands. And I think Jim was losing it too at that point.
Well, I figured, once it starts out like that, the whole night's going to be like that. So you might as well go with it.
There you go. Yeah, run with it. Because
we did.
But it was a fun show by the time we got done with it.
It was.
Like, oh my God. But at the end of it, I think it was one of the better ones we've done.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. That way we don't go too off topic, because we're talking about sponsors, and you said you have ad copy that you need to read for shows.
Yes.
And Christy, when we did the show with you, you were sponsored by Mickey at Creative Edge.
Mhm.
How do you go about attracting your sponsors? What do you do with your sponsors, and what do they assist with? Do they help with production costs? Do they help put in towards, I know Patreon is a big one everybody's using these days. Do they help towards podcasting, fees, things like that? What do you do with your sponsors, and how do you find them?
Also, do you have to have the creative edge to utilize the writer's edge? Like, does the creative edge help you get an edge?
No.
Never mind.
It was a good try, though.
I'm
It's
sorry.
such a good question, and then Jason opened his mouth.
That's usually the way this goes.
Typically, with sponsors, since I put up the website, that's when I didn't have a website before that. It was much tougher with sponsors, but having a website and just having it up there, there's a page on there that says sponsorship options. And so they can look at what we offer and what they're going to get. And so that's really all I've done so far. I probably will be doing a lot more in the future. But as I was launching just at the beginning of the year, the website launched. That's what I did, and that started it, actually. Creative Edge I had sponsored last year, and now we have another sponsor coming next month. Yeah, it's next month. No, yeah, next month. And these are people that see us online. They're people who just watch the show. They're people who have a small business. It's usually a small business. Which is awesome to get to support small businesses. So typically, I would be reading something that they put forward. Of course, I have to be comfortable with it. It can't be something that is like way out there or, not appropriate for the audience. But it's always writing related. So I would just show their logo and then, say the ad copy. And it's usually pretty cool because a lot of people in the chat end up asking questions about that business and want to know more about it. So again, that's another reason to heavily vet whoever the sponsor would be and just make sure that this is something that anyone who watches the show would be interested in, So I can't say I've put too much effort into getting sponsors yet, but I will be going forward.
And then what does their sponsorship pay? Does it pay for website fees, or do you also have a podcast alongside the web show?
That is something that I want to do. Frankly, I've read all the instructions to that and I'm lost on it, to be honest.
That's where we are too.
Right? It's so confusing. I don't know what they're talking about. But anyway, so I would like to do that. For now, it helps with websites. It pays for the website. And I am looking to do a little bit more in terms of, I haven't decided if Facebook boosts or something would be worth it. With how Facebook's algorithm goes like this, I'm not really sure if it's worth it. But right now, it's always website related.
Okay. And then Jim, yours pays for your show?
Yeah, ours pays our production costs and podcasts, and just keeps us on the air.
Now, how did you go about finding your sponsors?
Our first sponsor was a guy I used to work with. He owns just a huge company in Pittsburgh, and he's a long haul trucking company, and or a 3PL with the third party logistics. He's been sponsoring us since we've been on the air, and he continues to sponsor us. So, I mean, and he loves it because he's getting new business out of it. So
that was right about when the telegraph was invented, right? When you first started?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
2015.
Yeah.
May actually, our first show was May 15th, 2015. So we're sneaking up on 3 years.
Nice. Well, congratulations on that. Now, you guys, everyone that's here, we all do shows where we talk about other authors and their work for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we're not really plugging ourselves a whole lot in the show. I know that Katie and I don't a lot. We'll say, hey, what are you working on, or what are you working on? But we're not really promoting ourselves as much. Now, for you guys, why do you do what you do? Because we're not making money off of it.
No.
We're not selling more books because of it. Why do we do this? Because we put a lot of work and heart into what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, we actually do sell books off of it. So, but because our opening segment for a sponsorship is Black Dog and Tuscany Bay Books. So we have 2 1-minute commercials and 2 30-second commercials. The first 1-minute commercial is Tuscany Bay, and then we just go from there. So, no, we don't promote ourselves other than the commercial. So, I don't know. That's a great question, Jason. I don't know what the answer is.
Christy, what about you? Do you know? Oh, sorry, Richard. Sorry, Richard.
Go ahead, Richard.
I know the reason why I did it was I did 3 shows as a guest on the writer's block, and really enjoyed every time I was on. So that when Jim offered me the opportunity to be a occasional guest host, I wanted to do it because it gives me a chance to meet other authors, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm finding out different things that they're doing that I had never considered before, and maybe start applying to future works that I'm working on. Not the ideas and concepts, but like the discussion questions or how they approach finding enough time to write. So for me, I'm meeting these new authors. I'm reading material that I normally wouldn't read, and coming across some good stories, and also kind of learning a little bit more about how I can be better at my craft. So there's a positive for me to be on the show, beyond trying to promote myself, and that's the way I approach it.
Yeah. Well, I have never left a show and not learned something, and that's the truth. Every author has something to offer. Everyone, whether it's a different way of doing something that you already do, or something that you hadn't even thought of yet, and you give them ideas. We banter stuff back and forth all the time. So this is a show about writing, and what better discussion to have in a writing show is about writing. So
what about you, Christy? What do you think?
Yeah, similar for me. I love learning from other people and just hearing their responses. And like I said, on both of my platforms, I want to, on the one, I want to learn things I didn't know before, and also then help other people find out things they didn't know before. But it can be as simple as the most common questions. It can be uncommon ones. We had a show last year, I think it was, uncommonly common writing questions that are harder to find just by Googling them. And so I wanted to ask, these are definitely questions everyone has, but I can't find them on Google. What do you guys think? And so I'm trying to create a resource where writers can turn and learn things that they're definitely searching for. It's just not there, or it's just hard to track down, or we keep seeing the same answers over and over. A lot of writing magazines will put out pretty much copy paste similar answers to these questions. And I want to hear what real writers are saying and their unusual ways of dealing with things. So that's one thing. And then I can say that on my own writing platform, it's just youtube.com/Christie Stratos. I'm talking about writing and giving the same kind of advice, but I am using my own books and other books to give that advice. I'm saying you can learn a lot from this book. You can learn a lot from that. And when I wrote Anatomy of a Darkened Heart, here's how this went and that went. And I actually did read a review on someone's blog saying that they found me through YouTube, heard me talking about my book, and really wanted to read it. So that it wasn't my goal to sell books. I didn't think that was going to happen, but it's ending up that way apparently, which is just a great bonus for me. But I have to say that I really enjoy talking about my own process and getting comments back saying, yeah, this is exactly the same way for me. I didn't know someone else did it that way, or I've never heard of that. I want to try it. And so those things are really what I'm trying to achieve.
We try not to use our show for shameless self-promotion.
Yeah, right. We've talked about this before, Jim.
No, we really don't. But the title of a book's going to slip out, or if you've had something that's really great that happened, mention it. But the show is not geared toward us; it's geared for our guests. So,
what was the newest one? Tales from a Darkened Dog, something like that.
No, it's The Last Lonely Trail.
Bring the cover out. There you go.
There it is.
Marketing.
And we've mentioned that book maybe 3 times on the show now, and it's actually getting traction. So I'm not.
Yeah, that's it. You mention it in a relevant context just because it fits, and then magically someone says, "I want to know what that's like," and they buy it, and it's interesting.
Well, yeah, and then not only that, but Richard's got a whole bunch of friends that he threw in there, so they're buying it just to see themselves get killed.
Well, it comes from the red shirting term. I'm sure, I don't know if you've heard it. Sci-fi writers were doing this now. We go out and get volunteers to be red shirted in our book. Usually you die in a very stupid way.
Yes.
So I got the idea. I've got a gang of 9 guys I've got to create. I'm not feeling the urge to create all these names, so I put out a volunteer call. I had so many names. I had the first 9 guys in 10 minutes. I had to sneak some people in as extras throughout the book. And then a lot of my female writer friends wanted in on it. And I'm like, well, you can't be on the gang, but I guess I could put you in as a saloon girl. And I had people coming out of the woodworks trying to do that. So if you read the book, there's about maybe 20 people who actually are real people who wanted in on this. And in a way, that's going to help sell books because they're going to read it. They're going to tell their friends, and their friends are going to want to read it. So it wasn't the intent, but it's another way to market your book and get people looking at it.
Hell yeah, man! I submit to a. Actually, I've got one of them right here. This is Tales from the Canyons of the Damned.
There you go.
Daniel Arthur Smith, and there's tons of authors, and we're all in this huge sprawling group chat on Facebook, where it's just everybody who's involved with the publications in there. That way they can get new news, blah blah blah. And so I just decided I'm going to write a story and I'm going to kill off a bunch of these fools. And so I just picked 5 names at random out of the list. I'm like, I'm going to kill you off in this next one. And I'm like, all right, they're going to read that, they're going to laugh it, and they're going to share it with everybody they know. I'm like, yes. That's what I need to do more of.
I had to send 2 apology notes because we killed off 2 of the guys in a very gruesome manner. And I'm like, it's nothing personal. It's just it worked in the story. Don't worry. You don't have to look over your shoulder, see if I'm around. It's just, it worked.
Yeah. Well, one of these guys and mine ended up being a sexual predator. There's no easy way to say it. And he hasn't read it yet. I'm like, well, we'll see how this one goes over. That might not be a laugh, but
we'll see if the friendship can withstand it, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, I mean, Richard's got his wife in his book as a madam of a whorehouse.
Oh my goodness, Richard!
By her request.
I thought you were full of class, Richard.
He is.
Not consider it until she demanded to be in there as a madam. I'm like, all right.
By the way, everyone, if you want to check out Richard's books, all you do is Google DP, and you'll find a whole lot of listings of Richard's books right on there. Isn't that right?
Or Google
or the actual meaning to DP.
Else. You can go to sci-fi-scribe.com and you'll find me there. Oh man!
Now, as we talked about before, I do expect that all of you have sent over your headshot, all of your covers.
I did mine.
Because you don't want to know what Jason's going to put up in place of that if you don't send them to us. He's got some really funny memes he sticks up.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I like doing the memes, but that's only when I'm having a good editing day. If we're having like a crappy audio editing day, then I'm like, oh, F this all, and it's all business at that point. But yeah, what was I going to talk about? Okay, so I have a question for you guys. Sure. For actually everyone here, and I want you to answer me honestly and not bullshit me, okay? All right, we will start with everyone. Have any of you paid for an author's Patreon so that you can read updates from them? Paid actual money to do this?
No.
Christie? No. Katie, you have? No? You're shaking your head and nodding. What is it?
I think my computer's freezing up a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm getting glitchy on my.
What about you, Jason?
I have never paid for updates on anything.
No.
And so that's why we want to talk about this. Patreon is, everyone seems to be talking about this right now as far as indie authors that I'm friends with. And I don't know how it's getting any traction, but what I'm wondering is, do you guys think that the traction is real, or are people just talking about it? I mean, is this something?
I think a lot of what's driving that platform are the already established authors that people want to, follow. So they'll pay money. So you're going to have a lot of people pay $5 or $10 or whatever you want to charge. But for non-established or those who are just starting, I've looked at a few of them, and they don't have, maybe 5 or 6 people are kicking in money. So to me, I looked at it and I didn't really see an advantage to using it. And I just don't see it as being that good of a deal to get into.
Well, you know what? I think it's a lot of it has to do with, I think you're right, Jason. It's established people, or it's just something to throw a bunch of conversation out there, because I don't know of any writer that actually would pay another writer to be kept up on what's going on.
And that's how I feel about it. I mean, I love writers, and I mean, I love that. I mean, I love so many writers, and not just people I know personally, but you know, the big name authors that I totally fangirl out about. You know, Pierce Brown, who's kind of my sci-fi crush guy. I absolutely love that guy, but I still wouldn't pay for a weekly website update, and I feel like maybe people are getting, I don't know, I don't think tricked into it is the way to describe it, but I feel like there's a lot of false hope being put on this, because I mean, I send out newsletters that have free stories in them or free excerpts or this or that, and it's like I have a hell of a time even getting 40% of the people to open the damn newsletter, and that's free. You're not paying shit for that.
Right.
So it's like, you know, how do I expect? I don't know. I don't get it.
I think it is what Richard said. I see a lot of established authors, like really, really established, already doing pretty well on sales, but you know, they go into Patreon and then they can bring down a really large amount of money. But for the majority that I see, it's a tough incline there. It's really steep. And I do know, like, I had read up about it. I had thought about doing it like 2 years ago. And I just kept saying, why would someone pay for mine as opposed to someone else's? Like, I just don't understand. Like, from my own perspective, I can't understand it. And so I'm sure there are people who are huge fans of someone and maybe they get something back. Like, they're a huge author and they're not on social media much, so now you get a chance to talk to them. I'm not sure, but something like that. I see the same rewards across Patreon a lot. You know, pay $100 and you get to have a one-on-one chat with me every month. You know, pay this much a month and much, and you get a story of mine and all that kind of stuff. And maybe it's great for some people, but I couldn't figure out, like, who is my target audience? Do you know what I mean? Sure, my readers could be my target audience, but again, they can just buy my book instead of paying me monthly. I'm not sure why they would pay me monthly. I just can't figure it out.
Yeah, I get that totally.
About the price of books lately too. I don't see how people would be inclined to donate when they complain about a $2.99 or $3.99 ebook coming out.
Right.
Well, people complain about 99-cent ebooks, and but yeah, so it's a weird thing, that the Patreon thing. I think that the idea of it is cool from the artist standpoint, that you're going to give these people these cool updates, and you're gonna get a little bit of cash flow in return to help supplement your income. I think the idea is neat, but I don't know, for us little guys, I just don't feel like it's terribly realistic. That being said, Pierce Brown, Stephen King, Dean Koontz, and Michael Crichton, even though I know you're dead, Michael, if any of you want to be my real life friend, I will pay you $5 a month in real life time. Yeah,
you can be half for $5, right, Jason?
But see, that's exactly what I see. The people who get the most amount of money have like 40 books out.
Yeah.
And an established following. Yeah.
Well, wasn't it like a year or two ago, Kickstarter was the big thing, and people were kickstarting all of their novels. And then it seemed like out of the blue, Patreon came in and people are using it as like Kickstarter light. They're getting the small incremental monthly payments in order to build up on their book. And from some of the authors I've seen, they'll throw out chapters that haven't been edited, you know, as a teaser, or as a, you know, using their Patreon subscribers as proofreaders almost. Yeah.
Well, and I think that people see things like, you know, Kickstarters and GoFundMes, things like that, where certain people have had a lot of success. And in GoFundMe's case, you know, a lot of these people are really in desperate need of help, and they're getting all this outpouring of help. And I think that it's hard for young authors or old authors like me, who maybe haven't been in the game for that long, to accept that, you know, it's just going to be a lot of hard work. You know, there isn't going to be just your career is not just going to be paid by your admirers to work on your writing every month. You're just going to have to keep working your ass off.
Right.
And it's kind of tough to hear, especially when you're not making a lot of money. But yeah, it's hard work, man. All of it. It's hard work. And even though it's fun and we get to talk with guys like you all the time, and we love that, you still got to do your job. Just like someone going to work for 40 hours a week, you got to get your ass behind the computer and do your writing and do your promotion.
Right.
Although I have to admit that Spilling Ink is probably my favorite part of the week, though. I enjoy getting to chat with new authors every week. And, you've all said it in some way or another, but it's a learning experience too. Not only are you networking and meeting other authors, but you're learning.
And one of I think my favorite, probably my two favorite shows is when we get like the grizzled old cowboy on the show who's been around for 100 years, riding on his lone horse through the desert, and we get him on to talk about his experience. Those are my favorite shows. I really love those shows.
Oh, mine were Craig Johnson, mentioning cowboys. Craig Johnson, who writes Longmire, and next month we have John Sanford going to be on our show.
Holy shit, man! Oh, who are those guys? I've never heard of those guys before.
Yeah. Well, the guest we had on last Thursday, we mentioned John Sanford. She had no idea who he was.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So when I sent her coffee mug, I also sent her a John Sanford book.
Excellent. Was she 16 or something?
No. She's the one that wrote the really dark short stories that we had to read.
Oh, nice.
Her name was Erin Pringle, like the potato chip.
Oh, I like it.
That's how she said it.
Yeah.
I like it.
See, that's the bonus for doing the show, is sometimes we get to read the book before it comes out to everybody else.
Oh,
right.
snap.
Nice.
Wow.
Of course, I have that under
lock one.
I know someone who wrote a book called Lock and Key.
Oh my goodness. Who could it be? I have no idea.
Oh my God, look at that.
the perfect segue.
Coincidence.
Hey, well, guys, I'd love to keep this mindless chatter up, but I've got a date, so I've got to get moving.
Woo! All right. Well, coincidentally enough, we are right at our hour. It's almost like you guys are professionals in this whole.
It's not like we've never done it. Yeah.
Well, everybody, it was great to have you all on tonight. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. And
Thanks, Jason.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
For
great.
all our viewers or listeners out there, thanks for joining us on another episode of Spilling Ink, the talk show that takes you behind the scenes in the publishing world. Have a good night, everybody.